Right. I think that'll do. Thank you. Thank you. What we'll do is we'll make a start. If anyone sees people just kind of wandering in on the screen and not knowing which one to buzz, if you want to shout it's behind you or something like that, I will let them in. But we'll make a start anyway. I'm Josh. It's lovely to meet you all, see you all. There's a pack which Cedric really kindly put together, which some of you have looked at or might look at the end. It's got some useful info that you can take away after this. Feel free to make notes, jot down questions, anything like that. Two things. One, please don't wait till the end to ask questions. It's just like a small group of us. If questions are coming up, please feel free to just stop whoever's speaking. I will very shortly introduce Lucy and Jacob, both of whom work at SEDEC, and you'll hear a bit from all of us really, maybe a bit less from Jacob, but it's nice that he's here anyway, over this evening. I wanted really to thank you all for being, for like signing up to come on Netina this summer. It's like a really, really amazing experience. And I was thinking when I do this parents' evening and like information evening, I don't want it to, some of it's quite dry. There's a lot of details to get through. And often when I do this, particularly for Israel Tour, we list all the different things that people need to know. But at the end of it, they've kind of forgotten what it's about. We were really lucky because someone last year who went on the programme is quite into film and video and things like that. And what he did actually is he put together a bit of a video, and I thought there's no better way to get everyone a bit excited and a bit in the mood for like what's actually going to happen this summer than to start with that. So we'll start with that. We'll start with the why, and then afterwards we'll go into a bit of the details about how and answer some of the questions that you have. So I just put this on. It's like 10, 12 minutes. It's a feature-length film, whatever. It's like a 10-minute thing. Then we'll whiz through a presentation. Some of it will be more interesting than others. And then if at the end there's any questions, then we will go through them. And if you want to find us also one-on-one at the end, I'm sure we'll be around for that too. So with no further ado, let me just put this on. One thing very quickly. I just want it to come through the speakers, it's a bit better. Sorry, by the way, for all the mess. Also, we've just had the walls repainted and it's been a bit crazy down here.
This is Jenna, the coordinator of the trip. Meet George, the Ghanaian camp supervisor, and Ram, the other Ghanaian camp supervisor. And finally, James and Olivia, the British camp supervisor. It's going to be hopefully be a really good day.
The chief of Netina, which is the village that we work in. So they had a meeting with the chief, which is a big deal.
We're about to go on tour of the palace, and the chief is amazing.
More content than we needed, of course. So I'm actually going to stop it there, not for any real reason, it's just, you get the picture. It's brilliantly, like, the trip ran for the first time, Netina ran for the first time last summer. It's a project between FZY, where I work, which is the building we're in, and SEDEC. We are like a Jewish Zionist pluralist youth movement, and in a moment what I'll do is I'll explain a little bit about what our perspective is with the programme, what we try and get out of it, why we're running it, basically. And then what we'll do a little bit, and what the programme looks like, what's a normal day on the programme, what kind of thing. That video, by the way, just for a bit of context, that was just, it was, you know, one part of a three-part thing. It was just the first week, it was a bit of getting to know the Ghanaian youth leaders. And then over the almost 3 weeks of the programme, they went on to like continuing this, what's really like a massive cultural exchange with these young Ghanaians, and to do that in like an amazing environment. And so our job at FZY is to help be part of like that building up that supportive educational framework and environment for the programme. And then broadly what happens is you or your kids go and they just have a brilliant time and learn a lot as well. So like I said before, don't wait for the end for questions. I'll do a little bit on FZY and then I will hand over to Lucy. So as some of you know, FZY is a Jewish Zionist pluralist youth movement. What that really means, I guess, like the Jewish bit and the Zionist bit makes sense. I want to touch a bit on the pluralism. FZY's members, participants, whatever, they are members of all denominations and none of Jewish practice in the UK, or Jewish life in the UK. We really think that when you get together this broad mix of people from a whole different range of religious backgrounds, the quality of conversation you get is much richer. When you bring together like ideas that disagree, we like that's the educational framework that we work to, and it's our like ideological vision for the community as well. And in a sentence, our vision statement is the Jewish people living in peace in the state of Israel, as one people and as a light unto the nations. So that's us in a nutshell. That's kind of who we are, and we do this through a range of different programming things. Some of it for younger kids, it's summer camps and it's Israel tours. Hadracha programs, Gap Year, which is like a year course, it's a 9-month thing in Israel. We are all, broadly speaking, young people. All of our leaders are volunteering, giving up their time. And to make sure that we're doing that and still doing things at a professional level, we work with organisations like SEDEC or like, you know, for our other programs, the UJIA or whoever these organisations might be. They ensure that we're doing things professionally. So that's the kind of the framework within which we work. We're Britain's oldest and like largest Zionist youth movement. And like I said, just a bit more on pluralism. So from like an educational, as you know, from an educational perspective, it's this core value. It's what we believe in. It's who we are, and it's the way we go about educating on our programs. But also just to address the questions that like often come up. What does that mean on like a day-to-day basis? Because people from all different backgrounds have all different religious practice. So all of the food we serve is kosher. Now in Ghana, what that means is we have like a kosher vegetarian kitchen, and just use mostly like raw products and kosher implements to eat them. And that for Shabbat, in public areas, Shabbat is kept at like a halakhic level. But what people then go and do, if they want to go listen to music in their rooms or something like that, that's up to them. So it's not about having a dogma that we force at people. It's more about creating a supportive framework where people can be true to their own religious beliefs, but not have that hold them back from mixing with people from other backgrounds and learning from them. So that's a little bit about F sub Y. I think I'm going to pass over to Lucy, who's going to talk about that.
Hi everyone. So Josh kindly introduced me. My name is Lucy, and I'm the Volunteer and Education Manager for SEDEC. A little bit of background: I actually was a volunteer in Ghana with SEDEC in 2014. I went back as the program coordinator in 2015, and that's when I first got involved in SEDEC. So I've been involved on and off for about 4 years, and now started working for SEDEC just at the beginning of this year. So I'm really, really excited to be running this program, and I'm really excited for you guys because I love Tamale, and this program is fantastic. So a little bit about SEDEC for those who aren't familiar with us. We are the UK Jewish community's response to extreme poverty. So what that means is that we work within the UK Jewish community to empower and educate our community to be able to work with and fundraise for communities primarily in Ghana and India to help people living in the most extreme poverty that you can imagine. So that's extreme poverty is defined as less than $1 a day, which is like $1.20 a day or £1 a day. I think that's the right way around. We don't do any development work ourselves, but rather we empower grassroots organisations within communities to empower their own communities to be able to lift themselves out of poverty. We don't prescribe what those programs should look like because we don't know what it's like to live in extreme poverty. Only people within those communities do. So the way it works, that they come to us with proposals, we market it up against how sustainable the project is. If we say it's sustainable, something good for the community, there's good monitoring and evaluation built into it, we then give grants to those communities. For us, sustainability looks like education, skills building, and microcredit. If anybody has any more questions on those, I'm happy to go into further development detail, but I'll also leave it there for now. So we've been around for 28 years, and in that time, we've supported over 140 international volunteers to India, Ghana, I believe Uganda, and Zimbabwe. We have 139 global partners. So those organisations working in communities, they're our partners. And we have given them over £1.7 million in grants. We are guided by five values, 5 Jewish values, and this is what makes us also part of the Jewish community's response, is that Jewish values guide us in all the work that we do. So we have Tzedek, which is justice, and also where our name comes from, obviously. You shall love the stranger. We will do and we will understand. Partnership, and it's not your duty to complete the work. I think in particular in this program, it's a lot about you shall love the stranger coming through in that cultural exchange element of this program, and we will do and we will understand. You're going to be educated on principles of international development, and you will be seeing them in action when you go to Ghana. So, Josh?
I just want to talk a little bit about how this program began, how we see it fitting into like our educational framework. So the Mazkura FSY a couple of years ago was a guy called Noah, and basically what we realised, a lot of youth movements have this, is there's a lot of popularity for programs that are, in quotes, rites of passage. People go to Israel either with their schools or on Israel tour, some people both. And then what we're really seeing is this kind of big drop-off in informal Jewish education. And like we really believe that that's the best environment that people grow into ideological Jewish identities that fit that. So we really thought that we needed a program that was going to do that, and a program that was also like rooted in the values that we care about as a youth movement. And one other thing that we kind of were bearing in mind, and I won't be too boring about it, but I watched a TED Talk, and there's just a short theory of like what things are memorable, what makes things memorable. And broadly speaking, it's changes to the routine, how the way things end, and meaningful moments. Now, if you can create an event that is a change from the routine, has like a strong ending, and has different meaningful moments in, people remember that and take that with them for a long time. They become really identity-forming experiences. Now, it's really hard to do that as a youth movement on a Monday evening in the Bayit. That's like typically one of the challenges that we have. But what we do have is, I think, like it's a huge opportunity these days to take people out of their comfort zones and into, I guess, their learning zones. And that's where when people leave their environments and they start doing meaningful things, you have these experiences that really end up guiding people beyond that. So that's part of the thought process behind it. Like Lucy mentioned, it's a program that's like really rooted in Jewish values. And also what's I think quite nice for FZY is for people who grew up through the movement. Netina is the opportunity to explore Jewish values that maybe haven't come up in some of the other things. And in particular, FZY is a youth movement that, with several aims and ideals, and we talk a lot about Tikkun Olam, but it's one of those things where we do some of that in Hendon, and people often wonder, how is that mending the world, fixing the world? So this is a way in which we can engage with other values that we don't always come across on like a daily, weekly, monthly basis here. And it's also a genuine youth movement value. So one of the great things about this program is it really empowers the young people who are on it to think for themselves, to build their own experiences, and to really form lasting friendships with each other, with the young Ghanaians and with other people in Ghana. So it's a learning experience that's really driven by the participants. And in some ways that really separates it from summer camps and Israel tours, which are these structural experiences where they just go because everyone else goes and they don't really think about it. So it's a huge thing to do. And actually that's why it's always amazing that the people who do this program are choosing it for themselves, and they're often people that I really look up to actually in many ways. And then the final thing I wanted to say is it's got this real emphasis of this program is on a cultural exchange between the young Jewish Brits who fly out to Ghana for just under 3 weeks and these Ghanaian youth leaders, so that when the British people leave the community at the end of these 3 weeks, there's still this really empowering and lasting commitment that the Ghanaian youth leaders can still have in their communities, in their homes, schools and places like that. So that's a little bit about why the program exists and how it works. And the next thing, so this is hard to make out, so don't worry if you can't read it. I wonder, do you reckon Lucy might do this?
Yeah.
This is just what a typical day looks like on the program.
So I'll kind of go through it top line, and then I'm sure there'll be some questions which I'll be happy to answer even. So we start each day with a framing session, so that every day is put in an educational context. So whether that be a development principle or something about Ghanaian culture or something about the educational system in Ghana, we start every day with a conversation, learning something new that we'll then see in action on the ground. We leave for Tolon, which is the district that we're working in. So the area is northern region of Ghana, the district is Tolon, and the village is Nangpala. And we're staying in a kind of small city's probably a strong word, but small town next to the district of Tolon, called Tamale. So we leave for Tolon at about the time that the Ghanaian youth leaders get to Nangpala, and they start the first activity whilst you guys are on your way there. This is an activity, although it's being run by the Ghanaian youth leaders, you will have worked on together in some way during the pre-camp. The second activity is then run, again headed up by the Ghanaian youth leaders, and you guys will be there to support in the room with them. Activity 3 you'll do. You'll probably get there around the middle of activity 2. Lunch is together, and actually part of your role during lunch is helping the kids getting their food, teaching them about hygiene, washing their hands, washing their plates, and that's really a big part of your role. So it's not just you're sitting around for an hour. That is a large part of being on the camp and a really great educational opportunity. And then activity 4 is the chance that you guys get to kind of front lead a session with the Ghanaian youth leaders helping you guys out. There's a closing ceremony every day at 2 o'clock, and you guys will all plan that together. So Ghanaians and UK youth leaders come together to plan it. You have feedback separately on the day. Partly we do it separately just because there might be stuff that comes up that the Ghanaian youth leaders don't feel comfortable saying in front of the UK youth leaders and vice versa. And it's really important to have that space to feedback separately so that the people on the ground, such as Jacob here, can then talk to the equivalent of his role in the for the Ghanaian youth leaders and work out what might be happening and keep improving the program even on the ground. We then travel back to Tamale, and we have a whole evening where it'll be either an evening activity or a processing session or an activity run by the FZY Rakazim. So that's sort of the overview. I don't know if anybody has any questions at this point. Any queries?
No breakfast. Well, there is breakfast.
Somewhere there will be breakfast, yeah. Don't panic. Anything else that people would like to know at this point? Okay, great. If anything comes up, just let me know. Cool.
One thing I wanted to actually add was just in terms of the group structure, because some of that's not clear. So there's 8 people going on the programme, and there are 2 kind of senior madrachim or rakazim, actually rakazot, because they're both women there, called Laurie and Jessie. Now, because they're both, one's just doing like final exams and stuff, they're not here this evening. Some of you will have met Jessie at the first training day. They're both brilliant. They've both led several programs before. Laurie did FZY year course, so she's lived in Israel for 9 months, and then has led Israel tour and other things, and Jessie's also led Israel tour. So they're like brilliant people to have there, and these activities in the evening will look different every day. Sometimes there'll be big group activities all together, sometimes smaller discussions or like breakout groups. And that's like really the process in the evenings and stuff. And actually another thing that will happen over the period that the group's there is there'll be a few other kind of extra, slightly different activities, sometimes in the evening, sometimes on Sundays or whatever, where the group will either, if it's on a Sunday, we'll go on a trip somewhere and, you know, we're not sure what those places are going to be yet. We think one could be to a wildlife park and a couple of other things, which they really enjoyed last year. And also in the evenings, people will come and do like a drumming circle with them or a cookery lesson or something like that. So the evenings are quite varied between this sort of informal education, youth movement style, and also kind of processing and plan for the next day, and then some other like recreational chilled out activities. Let's see what's coming up next. So there's a slide here on training/orientation. Now I'm aware that 2 of the training days have happened, and we're actually working on a way to do a bit of catch up on those at the moment. So you'll hear a bit more from us about that, I guess, soon. There's a 3rd training/orientation day, which will actually be at the offices of SEDEC, and that's on the 3rd of June. And I will send out an email this week with a reminder and with the address, that's the word, sorry. Broadly speaking, so some of this has already been covered and some of this you will have still to cover. But the training is like a big part of the program itself. It makes sure that we kind of frame it correctly, people have the right expectations before the program. And it looks a lot like the Jewish values of, like the Jewish and developmental values where they cross over. It looks at the different roles people have while they're on the program. Are they tourists? Are they volunteers? Are they somewhere in between the two? What does that mean? And how can we like perceive of ourselves as people on that program? Some of the training is also a bit about what is SEDEC and also what is FZY. And also it's a way of preparing for some of the cultural and lifestyle differences in Ghana, because that's quite an important thing that people are aware of before they go. And the next slide, by the way, is in some ways quite important, in some ways less so. When we came up with the structure for this program, it did rely quite heavily on fundraising, and because of some of the ways in which we built it logistically over the year, it's now not something that we are particularly like reliant upon. Still, what we are looking to do is for people to kind of raise a small amount each. So we'd originally set like quite a large target, and it was also going to be a larger group of £10,000 between everyone, and it was going to be a group thing throughout the year. Logistically, the way things worked out didn't do that. But we are looking for people to raise just like a small target each on top of the cost of the programme. And anything would be helpful, like £50 or £100 or something like that. And I know that Joe, my colleague, had shared a link to like the Maccabi Fun Run or a different activity like that on the Facebook group that you're in. So please just get in touch if you want to be part of that, and I'm sure Joe will continue to be in touch about fundraising. And that goes to support SLY in kind of being able to provide this educational and cultural exchange program. I also just wanted to look a bit about after the summer. So for us, it's not something that you pay a bit of money and you go to Ghana and just under 3 weeks later you come back and we never see you again. We could do that, and actually, you know, if you come back and you've learned something and you've had a good time and you're well, then great, and like that's a box tick. But more than that, we look at these as like education experiences, as like really building up what it is to be 17, 18. It's quite like a pivotal time for you, and so it'd be really great to kind of harness that energy afterwards. And so SWY and SEDEC are going to put on like an ayeku, is that how you pronounce it? Like a... Oh, I learned that one from Ben. Okay. It means like a...
Josh will know that word.
Like it meant congratulations in the dialect that they speak in Somali. Like a congratulations evening where they share some of their experiences and do some things like that. And then there's a like an intense leadership course, a Hadracha Bet course, and a Hadracha seminar, where the people who've been on Netina will have the opportunity to run some of the theming and some of the sessions on the seminar later in the year. And for them, I know that last year's cohort really found it like a useful reunion sort of thing. It came in October, it was a Shabbaton away. And then what would happen is the following summer, you could take some of the things you learned from leading groups in Ghana and apply them as madrachem on our summer camps, Ofek and Kesha. So there's a lot, it doesn't just stop when you arrive back. Another thing that we're really keen to do for next year is incorporate this year's cohort into the training of next year's cohort, so that there's a bit of passing the baton. And you'll be invited back to SEDEC 1 year after for like an anniversary reunion thing. I won't ruin it all now, that's over a year away, so I won't tell you the content. But what we wanted to do really was be able to really kind of start some journeys here, and whether that's a long journey in formal education or in international development, we're happy either way. And there's a lot that goes on after you return. So that's kind of part of an expectation to have before you go, is that the trip is not it. I'm going to talk in a moment. What we're going to do is we're going to move on from the program and the content and whiz through some of the logistical stuff. Now, for some of the bits that are about to come up that are about the the doctors in Ghana or things like that, I might ask Lucy to explain them because she has spent more time there and knows the system a bit better. But what this also does is it outlines what you can expect from us in the office and what you can expect from our staff and SEDEC staff on the ground in Tamale. So in terms of safety and security, it says travel by bus. It's a private bus with the staff on. So that's when they go from the place where they stay in Tamale to the campsite every day and back. And if they were to go on Sunday on a day trip again, it would be on this private bus. The accommodation has a gate and security. Tamale is relatively safe with low recorded crime rates, and in particular at daytime. So there won't be any travelling once it's dark. That's one of the kind of fun things about the programme. So often in the evenings they might do something just after camp where they're out and about, but by the time it gets to 6 or 7 they'll be back inside the accommodation for the night. It does say that there's no need to bring expensive items. While Tamale is relatively safe, I think part of the nature of like a programme like that is to, I think, be modest with what you take, and also take care of the items you take. And experienced SEDEC staff, which will actually be Jacob and also a staff member called Charlie, who I'm right thinking lives there, is it all the year? Or, yeah. So he lives there all the time, and he is part of the senior staff who are there, and he'll be with the group all the time, and he'll be giving them briefings about what to do and what not to do and where to go. And so in terms of the safety and security, there's quite that structure in place. And what that does is really utilises to the best of our ability the structure that SEDEC already has for its many different programmes and partners in Ghana. In terms of also the care we take for the participants in the programme, we have two, like I mentioned before, really wonderful and very experienced rakazot who are coordinators. And the reason we call them that is because sometimes the role you take is Madrachem, you're like leaders on the camp sometimes. And so they're Rakazot, they're coordinators. And alongside them, there are 2 members of SEDEC staff, one of which is Jacob, the other is Charlie. The staff have relevant first aid training and also have mental health first aid training. That was something we felt was really important for us to know that everyone was going to be sent in safe hands. And the staff are experienced at this. I think that the people who are on the ground with them in Ghana are almost perfectly equipped to be doing the job. So I am very confident about that. So I actually posed the question, kind of who sees your child if your child has to go to a doctor or anything. This is, broadly speaking, the structure. Lucy, do you want to talk through it a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Just because you have been to both of these places.
Yeah. So I can say first of all in terms of the stuff on the ground in Tamale that we do, and then also just so that you know, we have people who are connected to SEDEC who are on call basically for the whole time of the programme here in the UK, for us to call any time, day or night, for whether it be physical medical advice or mental health medical advice. So we have that contact constantly to inform us also. And then on the ground in Tamale, there is a private clinic which we've used for years. I believe there were volunteers out there in 2012 who were using the clinic, and they are great. I've personally been there myself, and it's great. The staff are wonderful. They know what they're doing. We really do trust them, and it's really close to where we're staying. And then just a little bit further than that, and when I say a little bit, I literally mean 3 minutes in a taxi, is Tamale Teaching Hospital, which is one of the top hospitals in the country. Again, I have taken a participant there. It was wonderful, it was clean, the staff are great, it's efficient. So we know the places that we're going to, we really trust them, and there is a system for what we do, which is that we go to the clinic first, the clinic then refer us to the right place. If it's out of hours for the clinic, we have full confidence in going to the hospital nearby. But hopefully this will not need to be followed, and it's all going to be great. But we're in good hands.
And then I also just wanted to say kind of what you would get from us anyway. So every day you will get an email daily update. Now I would say just some days they'll come at different times, and that's because what we'll try and do is include some photos of your kids in them as well. So that's why sometimes if it's later in the day, we're normally just haranguing the Madrachem, the Rakazem, to send us some photos. But you'll get an update from us every day except for Shabbat, so the Saturday, we'll get one to you at Friday lunchtime. And also except for Sunday, the Sundays they're on trips all day anyway, they're all together. We will give you an emergency phone number just before the start of the programme. That's for emergencies only, which sounds like a silly thing to say, but I will. And you know, it didn't really get used very much last year, but there's also an emergency phone for Israel Tour, which kind of rings all the time, and often we do have to tell people that if it's not an emergency, we'll politely hang up and we'll tell you how to get in touch. But hopefully we won't be needing that. And then the office hours are there, we're 9:30 to 5:30, and then we close early on a Friday. It's probably actually later than 2, but I just put it there to be safe. So don't worry about that. Like I said, you'll hear from us every day. And if you're not hearing from us, it's most probably because we don't have the correct email address. So please feel free to give us a call anytime and say, have you got the correct email address or something like that, and we'll make sure that happens. Here are some key dates. As you can see, we've kind of crossed out the orientation sessions that were in the past, and we are a little bit in the process of, for people who weren't at those, adding either a couple of hours to the one on Sunday the 3rd of June, or doing a couple of things by Skype. So we'll work out the best way to do that. And then below that is the dates of the trip itself. The reason I was quite specific, so the trip, as you know, is the 29th to the 17th. You land back on the morning of the 17th, you actually fly overnight 16th to 17th. So you, because I think that is a Friday morning, but it's at like 9 AM or something like that. Potentially earlier. So they are the key dates.
So do we have to take them to the airport when they meet here to go to the airport?
That is a really, really good question. I will check that for you and let you know. I think certainly on the way back, you would collect them from the airport, but we may put some transport on the way to the airport. I will certainly let you know about that. I reckon it's a good question. I think everyone will get 2 t-shirts as well. Some the important questions. And then finally, there's some information about this in all of the packs. There's like a bit of a pre-summer checklist. In terms of the visa, I know that some people have had some issues because they needed to provide the ticket number. Now I've finally got that from our travel agent. They were quite reticent to give it to us, which was a bit of a strange thing. So I've got that and I can read it out now, and then I'll also make sure it's included in future correspondence. But the ticket number, if you want to jot it down, or if you've got a pen to hand, is P for Papa, T for Tango, G for Golf, Z for Zulu, V for Victor, and Q for Quebec. So PTGZVQ. So that's the, because I know that, so the whole process is made clear in that pack. There's a, this is how you apply for a visa, and this is the letter you need. That's all in there, but they might ask for that ticket. So now you have the ticket booking reference. Please do.
Just to add to this pre-summer checklist also, which is something we mentioned at the training days, everybody needs to apply for a DBS check because we follow best practice, and that means even though in Ghana they might not require it, Ghanaian teachers, we follow best practice in the UK, which is we're working with kids, so everybody needs to have a DBS check, please.
Yeah, that will also be emailed to you.
You will, it's an online form to fill in, and you will get sent the link, and it's super easy, and it takes a few weeks to come through, so just make sure you're doing that in time.
I'm just making a note of the transport question.
If you go online and there's a link, is there certain categories that you have to fill out?
For the DBS check?
Different DBS.
No, so we will. So I was just about to say on that, what we'll do is the things that have come up this evening, I will get to you tomorrow. Because the DBS check is also like a username and password for each organisation. So we have ours, and I will just put that all in an email so that people can do that over the next couple of weeks or something. The other thing you'll hear, passport is fairly obvious, make sure it's in date and things like that, but also the yellow fever certification. So if you also have a look in the packs, there's a bit of information about the vaccinations that are required and the ones that are recommended. Now, in particular, yellow fever, the certificate is something you need to present alongside your passport to get into the country as proof of the yellow fever. If it's something you've had done in the past, you may be able to get in touch with your GP. They may be able to just give you another copy of the certificate if they've got it on record. But it's quite an important thing, and I'm sure in almost every communication you get from us between now and mid-July, it will say, remember your yellow fever certificate.
Can you get your visa without your yellow fever certificate, or do you need to present it?
Yeah, you get the visa. They don't ask to see it, but at the airport they do.
And yeah, I was just about to say, so we're on questions. So.
Do you want, I think my daughter's got DBS, do you want one done under your organisation, or does that have to, or can we use this?
I think I'll check with the office manager who kind of goes through all the DBS checks. It may be that if we don't need a new one, we may need just to see proof of the certificate. That will probably be enough. I should say that we've all got different roles in the summer, and we've all got different roles now. So I'm going to sit down so that the questions can come at us equally, and we'll just, whichever one of us is best placed to answer, will do so. But feel free to ask any questions, and then, like I said, if there aren't any, I'll be hanging around at the end. I'll be putting all of this wire and cables away, so don't worry, you can find them.
Very quickly before questions, so I don't forget this also. In line with new GDPR rules, which I'm sure you're all delighted to hear more about, I'm sure you filled me out for FZY, but for SEDEC, at the end we'd just like to get you guys to sign a form just to say that you're happy for us to be in touch for different things. So you can either tick if you're happy to get our newsletter and more information, or if you'd only like us to be in contact about specifically Netina stuff for this year, but we just need that for our records also. So I will try and grab you all at the end if that's okay. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions, happy to answer.
How long the flights?
About 8 hours.
So, yeah, noticed there was 2 flights in total.
Oh yeah, so the first flight is to Accra. And actually, so what we did is we went over like a day on the program, but in terms of what the 18 or 19 days really looks like, that first day is a flight to Accra, and later that day they go to Male.
So they fly the first day to Accra. They do 1 night overnight in Accra, which is the main city in the south of the country. And then there's an hour and a half flight up to Tamale the next morning. The flight's at about 6:30 in the morning. You land, and then we go straight into sort of going to the accommodation and then getting to know Tamale. And then a bit more of an overview, just so you guys know, is that we spend a few days doing pre-camp with the Ghanaian youth leaders. There's then 4 days of camp. Again, we kind of have, I think there's a Shabbat somewhere in there, a bit of time with the Ghanaian youth leaders, and then another 3 days of camp. And then we do flight back down to Accra. We have a full day in Accra. It's quite an interesting city, a few sites to see, a bit of history, a bit of discussion about that, and get to see some cool things. And then there's an evening flight home.
On your shelter, they had to buy water. Obviously, the water's not drinkable. So is it all free water?
Yeah, so we will provide water. I don't know if you guys saw, but in the video there was actually a girl with like a sack of water in her mouth. I don't know if anyone caught that. So water in Ghana generally comes in plastic sachets. So what we do is we bulk buy those. So there's always going to be water in the house, which will be 100% drinkable, purified water. What I suggest, something that I did when I was there, is bring a reusable plastic bottle with you, because it is an absolute pain to have. Once you rip the sachet open with your teeth, and then it's just open. And if you don't want to drink that much water, you've just left with a sachet of water. So I would suggest bringing a plastic bottle. So at the beginning of the day or every few hours, you can take a few sachets, fill up your water bottle, and then keep that with you.
So that's, they don't need additional purification tablets, blah blah blah. Okay.
That water is totally fine.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Julie said Cedric, what's here?
It's at Sedek.
Which is in Child's Hill. You guys will get the address, but we're just down the road. Oh.
Yes.
No.
Nobody might know.
What about washing clothes? That they can do that.
So some places do have a laundry service. I used to take, when I was feeling very lazy, I'd take my clothes to like a local like guest house, and we are staying in a guest house, and they might have a laundry service. Or when I was a bit poorer and staying there and couldn't afford to go to a guest house, you get a bucket of water, you get a bar of soap, and you sit and you spend your Sunday morning in the garden scrubbing your clothes. So if there's a laundry service as part of the guest house, that's available. If not, it is a hand wash situation.
To be clear, you spent a longer amount of time.
Oh yeah, just to be clear, I wasn't there for 3 weeks. I was there for 2 months the first time and 3 months the second time. So that's why there was some far more hand washing going on. As a nice side point, the soap you use to wash your clothes, also the soap you buy to wash your body. So multi-purpose.
I was just going back reading the visa thing here, and it says that you'll need a letter of invitation from SEDEC. Is that included or?
It's not in your pack now, but you should have received it.
Yeah, I think so.
If not, we'll email it out again. It's just an electronic letter signed by me saying that you're going out there to work with us. We will send it out to everyone just to make sure that everyone has it. That's the letter you need. And if you don't receive it, please do let us know, because that is very important.
It's a silly question, but you mentioned soap. I mean, I know it's only 3 weeks, but can they purchase toiletries, or do they need to take everything with them?
You can purchase some things. I would suggest taking things with you, partly because you don't know what you'll be able to get. I don't know how much time you guys will have to even like go into town and go to the market to find it. And there's a lot of like making do with what there is, and if you're only there for a few weeks, like it is possible to take enough toiletries to kind of last that amount of time. I don't think you'll need that much, but yeah, take what you need. Fair. Something else to say, also to bring with you, and it is in the form, like all the paperwork you've been given, but you need a mosquito net, you need anti-malarials, and you need DEET. So that's just bug repellent, but it's at least 50% DEET. I personally recommend a brand called Benz. It comes in a very small orange bottle, and it's like very, very strong. I think it's like 90% DEET. Benz, as in like belonging to Ben. It's really good. And I would also say that in terms of like mosquitoes and getting bitten and stuff, the best way to prevent bites is to wear long clothing. So, you know, I used to sleep in socks so that my feet wouldn't get bitten, and my ankles are the only place because I never really roll down my leggings or my jeans. But cover up as much as possible, and that is the best way to not get bitten. And DEET all the time. And you can get clothing spray also that you put on your clothes before you wear them, and then it lasts you all day.
So if there are no more questions, what's likely to happen between now and the summer is there will be more updates, there will be more information. I made a list of everything that's come up this evening as well, that I will endeavour to get to ASAP, hopefully tomorrow, so that people can in particular make a start on things like visa applications or anything else like that. If there's other things that come up between now and the summer, or during the summer, or whatever, you'll have the emergency phone for emergencies, and then also the office is open. Please call us. If we're not sure, we'll speak to SEDEC. If they'll give us the answer, we'll let you know. And broadly speaking, please be in touch. There's no question that's going to be too silly. We want to be as prepared as possible. And if someone, and don't worry if someone asks a question and we think that answer deserves to go to everyone, we'll let everyone know. So keep an eye on your email inboxes and things like that, as I'm sure you will do. And I can't really think of that much else. I just wanted to say also a big thank you for coming this evening, and thank you for trusting us with your children this summer. We, over the years, have taken, as an organisation, we've taken over 10, 12,000 people abroad. Most of those have been to Israel. But we are used to being in this sort of situation, but we still are grateful that there are parents of, I'm sure, very precious children out there who are still willing to send them away with us. They're going to have a great time. Thank you very much. Who's doing the
Yeah, I'm
GDPR
afraid
stuff?
we're going to ask you guys to do GDPR stuff before you go, if that's all right.
It comes in at midnight tonight, so this is the last day.
Fruit and veg and things like that with water.
Sure, you can.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask
No
Lucy.
problem.
I'll turn the light on.
So in terms, I can talk about food generally for a moment. So what we do is we hire cooks, Ghanaian cooks, local cooks. And all the food is washed in purified water. So we don't let unpurified water, through anything we do, come into contact with your kids. And we highly recommend things like having a bottle of